Right. See if we can get the book in there. There we are. Chapter 6. The Captain's Papers. We rode hard all the way. Till we drew up before Dr. Livesey's door. The house was all dark to the front. Mr. Dance, which is the fellow who's given him a lift on his horse, as we remember from last time, told me to jump down and knock. And Dogger gave me a stirrup to descend by. The door was opened almost at once by the maid. He's out of breath for some reason, I don't know why. I suppose you would be a bit out of breath, you've been on a horse for ages. Is Dr. Livesey in? I asked. No, she said. He had come home in the afternoon, but had gone up to the hall to dine and pass the evening with the squire. So he's gone up the sort of stately home. He's gone up the National Trust property nearby, where his big posh mate is obviously gives him a bit of guinea fowl every night in return for a bit of chat and a bit of company, because I imagine he's just whistling wind in that house. So Dr. Livesey goes over to keep him company. So there we go, boys, said Mr. Dance. That sounds like something I should be saying, not Mr. Dance. There we go, boys. So there we go, boys, said Mr. Dance. This time, as the distance was short, I did not mount, but ran with Dogger's stirrup leather to the lodge gates, and up the long, leafless, moonlit avenue to where the white line of the hall buildings looked on either hand on great old gardens. Here Mr. Dance dismounted, and taking me along with him, was admitted at a word into the house. The servant led us down a matted passage, and showed us at the end into a great library, all lined with bookcases and busts upon the top of them, where the squire and Dr. Livesey sat, pipe in hand, on either side of a bright fire. Very cosy. I had never seen the squire so near at hand. He was a tall man, over 6 feet high, and broad in proportion, and he had a bluff, rough and ready face, all roughened and reddened and lined in his long travels. His eyebrows were very black and moved readily, and this gave him a look of some temper. Not bad, you would say, but quick and high. So he's basically like a big, massive wasp, essentially, is what we're dealing with here, aren't we? Wasp as in white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, not a giant insect. Although that would add a real flavour. Please welcome, this is the squire, gentlemen. Good evening. But he's not. He's a big, ruddy-faced, old, blustery old English squire. Come in, Dr. Dance. That's going to be his voice for now. I don't know if I can sustain that. Come in, Dr. Dance, says he, very stately and condescending. I wonder who he votes for. Know what I mean? Come in! He probably doesn't vote. He's probably just in charge. He did his 1769 as we established. Come in! Come in! Come in! Come in, Dr. Dance, says he, stately and condescending. Good evening, Dance. Good to have Dr. Livesey back. We haven't had Dr. Livesey back since about chapter 2, I would say. About chapter 2, when he warned Billy Bones that if he kept boozing, he was going to keel over, and he was right. Whigs, says Bauble Rob, I assume in relation to who the squire would vote for. Yeah, probably. I mean, as opposed to just wigs, which I imagine actually Dr. Livesey and the squire are both wearing. We've heard a description of Dr. Livesey's very fine powdered wig. So if you can imagine them, two big, lovely, big, fat, old, posh English fellas with wigs on, having a pipe, having a smoke, having a chat, in comes these lads. Good evening, Dance, says the doctor with a nod. And good evening to you, friend Jim. Weird. What good wind brings you here? The supervisor stood up straight and stiff and told his story like a lesson, like a church sermon. And you should have seen how the two gentlemen leaned forward and looked at each other and forgot to smoke in their surprise and interest. That's a pipe hanging out now. When they heard how my mother went back to the inn, Dr. Livesey fairly slapped his thigh. Oh, 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 oh. And the squire cried, "Bravo!" and broke his long pipe against the grate. So he's so chuffed at what he's hearing, this roistering story, he's banging his pipe on his own fireplace. He sounds crazy. Bravo! Long before it was done, Mr. Trelawney, that you will remember was the squire's name, had got up from his seat and was striding about the room, and the doctor, as if to hear the better, had taken off his powdered wig and sat there looking very strange indeed, with his own close-cropped black poll. No idea what that is. Hair. At last Mr. Dance finished the story. "Mr. Dance!" Dance, I'm going now, because he's... "Mr. Dance," said the squire, "you are a very noble fellow. And as for writing down that black atrocious miscreant..." He's obviously using that to mean, as in like Black Lord Sauron. He's not being racist. Although, in the current climate, awful. "I regard it as an act of virtue, sir, like stamping on a cockroach. This lad Hawkins is a trump, I perceive. He's a trump. He's a trump. He is either a psychopathic, lying fascist, or a fart. Hawkins, will you ring that bell? Mr. Dance must have some ale." "And so, Jim," said the doctor, "you have the thing that they were after, have you?" "Here it is, sir," said I, and gave him the oilskin packet. The doctor looked it all over as if his fingers were itching to open it, but instead of doing that, he put it quietly in the pocket of his coat. "Squire," said he, "when Dance has had his ale, he must, of course, be off on his Majesty's service. But I mean to..." He means he's a policeman. He's sending him off to do his police work. "Off on his Majesty's service. But I mean to keep Jim Hawkins here to sleep at my house. And with your permission, I propose we should have up the cold pie and let him sup." So he's bringing up a bit of pork pie and I say a beer, but he is about 6, isn't he, Jim, as we've decided. A bit of the cold pie. So, a big pigeon pie, very nice, no mucking about round the squire's, was brought in and put on a side table, and I made a hearty supper, which is to say, he ate it, they didn't then make him make a new supper, for I was as hungry as a hawk, while Mr. Dance was further complimented and at last dismissed. And now, Squire, said the doctor. "And now, Livesey," said the squire in the same breath. One at a time, ho, 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 laughed Dr. Livesey. This obviously all passes for a joke in 1769. Ho, ho. "You have heard of this Flint, I suppose?" "Heard of him?" cried the squire. "Heard of him, you say?" No, he doesn't say that, obviously. "Heard of him? He was the bloodthirstiest buccaneer that sailed. Blackbeard was a child to Flint. The Spaniards were so prodigiously afraid of him that I tell you, sir, I was sometimes proud he was an Englishman." That sounds like the attitude of plenty of people now, weirdly. "I've seen his topsails with these eyes off Trinidad, and the cowardly son of a rum puncheon that I sailed with put back, sir, into port of Spain." So the ship fled Captain Flint. Basically, Captain Flint, bad pirate. "Well, I've heard of him myself in England," said the doctor. "But the point is, had him money here. Money? Again, that's exactly what these people always want to know. Did he have any money? Because if he didn't, it's probably not worth talking about. Money? Cried the squire. Money? No, he didn't say that. Have you heard the story? What were these villains after but money? What do they care for but money? What should they risk their rascal carcasses for but money? That we shall soon know, replied the doctor. But you are so confoundedly hot-headed and exclamatory that I cannot get a word in. What I want to know is this. Supposing that I have here in my packet, packet, P-O-C-K, packet, some clue to where Flint buried his treasure, will that treasure amount to much? Amount, sir? Cried the squire. Amount, sir? Amount to much, sir? No. Again. No, I'm joking. It will amount to this. If we have the clue you talk about, I'll fit out a ship in Bristol Dock, take you and Hawkins here along, and I'll have the treasure if I search a year. Very well, said the doctor. Now then, if Jim is agreeable, we'll open the packet. And that's packet, not pocket, not in his pocket. He's opening the packet. The packet. Open the packet. Open the packet, Jim. Open the packet. And he laid it before him on the table. The bundle was sewn together, and the doctor had to get out his instrument case and cut the stitches with his medical scissors. I suppose he was normally using that to cut stitches out, I suppose. It contained two things. A book and a sealed paper. First of all, we'll try the book, observed the doctor. Right. Go for the longest one to look at. The one that's going to take the longest to examine. I'll definitely do that before I examine the piece of paper. First of all, we'll try the book, observed the doctor. The squire and I were both peering over his shoulder as he opened it, for Dr Livesey had kindly motioned me to come round from the side table where I had been eating to enjoy the sport of the search. On the first page there were only some scraps of writing, such as a man with a pen in his hand might make for idleness or practice. One was the same as the tattoo mark, Billy Bones his fancy. So if you remember, we saw that on Billy Bones' arm, didn't it? It said Billy Bones his fancy. It didn't say my name is Billy Bones. It said Billy Bones his fancy. What does that mean? I don't know. It's all a bit mysterious. And he did say, and he was like, well, now look here, Billy Bones. He was like, that's not my name. He was like, well, it is now. And that was just the end of the conversation, because this is the kind of people who are in charge. There's more than one of them, says Bulba Rob. Yes, one can check the book and another can check the paper. No, we're doing it very gradually, one by one. We don't want to overexcite ourselves. Mind you, with the way this squire's going on, it doesn't really surprise me. One was the same as the tattoo mark, Billy Bones' fancy. Then there was Mr. W. Bones, mate. That's quite funny. Mr. W. Bones, mate. That clears it up, really, doesn't it? Mr. W. Bones. Whose is this? Mr. W. Bones, mate. No more rum. He could have done with that, couldn't he? Off Palm Key, he got it. It spelt with two T's, because obviously the pirate he's not very good on his spelling. And some other snatches, mostly single words and unintelligible. I could not help wondering who it was that had got it. Double T. He's having a pop, Robert Louis Stevenson. And what it, with two T's again, come on Robert Louis, it was that he got. A knife in his back as like as not. Yes, thank you Robert Louis Stevenson. We got that. That is him writing that. That's not just me being me. Not much instruction here, said Dr Livesey as he passed on. The next 10 or 12 pages were filled with a curious series of entries. There was a date at one end of the line, and at the other a sum of money, as in common account books, but instead of explanatory writing, only a varying number of crosses between the two. On the 12th of June, 1745, for instance, a sum of £70 had plainly become due to someone, and there was nothing but 6 crosses to explain the cause. In a few cases, of course, boring this, isn't it? And then he had crosses for how many people he owed money, and the people he owed money he'd worked out by putting the numbers down and on the dates. We're basically being explained someone's QuickBooks here, is what we're looking at. So he's self-employed, Billy Bones. We've got that much. He's self-employed. In a few cases, to be sure, the name of a place would be added, as off Caracas, or a mere entry of latitude and longitude. Longitude? Longitude? I don't know. Longitude. I prefer longitude. As 62, 17, 20, 19, 2, 40. So if that means anything to you, crack on. Nothing to me. Nothing to me. The record lasted over nearly 20 years, the amount of the separate entries growing larger as time went on, and at the end, a grand total had been made out after 5 or 6 wrong additions, and these words appended, Bones, his pile. Well, to me, it sounds like that is his name, really, Billy Bones. Unless there's some massive joke here that none of us are getting because we don't understand pirate jokes from 1769. Bones meant... I don't know. Willies? I don't know. It's all euphemisms in olden-timey jokes. Well, of course, that refers to the Duke of Wriothesley's hat, which looked a bit like a bum. Hilarious. I can't make head nor tail of this, said Dr. Livesey. You and me both, Dr. Livesey. The things as clear as noonday! Noonday! Cried the squire. This is the black-hearted hound's account book. Well, we got that. These crosses stand for the names of ships or towns that they sank or plundered. The sums of the scoundrel's share, and where he feared an ambiguity, you see he added something clearer. Off Caracas. Now, you see, here was some unhappy vessel boarded off that coast. God help the poor souls that manned her coral long ago. Right, said the doctor. See what it is to be a traveller. Right, and the amounts increase, you see, as he rose in rank. There was little else in the volume but a few bearings of places noted in the blank leaves towards the end, and a table for reducing French, English and Spanish monies to a common value. Thrifty man, cried the doctor. He wasn't the one to be cheated. No, said the squire, for the other. The piece of paper. The paper had been sealed in several places with a thimble by way of seal. What? With a thimble by way of seal. He sealed it with a thimble. Saying that 4 times. The very thimble, perhaps, that I had found in the captain's pocket. He did find a thimble in the captain's pocket. I've ruined the tension of that moment by doing that. Got to stop doing that. The doctor opened the seals. So these are wax seals, all the way around the thing so nothing can get to this piece of paper. The doctor opened the seals with great care, and there fell out the map of an island with latitude and longitude, soundings, names of hills and bays and inlets, and every particular that would be needed to bring a ship to safe anchorage upon its shores. It was about 9 miles long and 5 across, shaped, you might say, like a fat dragon standing up. Yeah, if that didn't clear it up for you, if you're looking for the sort of shape, it looks like a fat dragon standing up. So there's no ambiguity there. Fat dragon standing up, and had 2 fine landlocked harbours and a hill in the centre part marked the Spyglass. Sorry, my accent was quite bad when I said that. The Spy, S-P-O-I-Y. Spy, the Spyglass, the Spyglass, the Spyglass. Well, what am I saying? The pirates won't be saying it like that, are they? Yeah, the Spyglass. They'll be going, it's Spyglass. A lot of chat going on here, lads. What are we saying? Living seals to seal the letter. That would not be beyond the realms of possibility with these pirate lads. I mean, you never know, do you? And his box was full of thimbles and fish bones and lizards and cakes and slinkies and baked goods, a dead owl, some old cookie cutters, springs, glasses with eyes on springs he had in there, toothpicks, Haribo, absolutely rampacked. So a couple of living seals would not have gone amiss. And every particular that would be needed to bring a ship to a safe anchorage upon its shores. It was about 9 miles long and 5 across, shaped, you might say, like a fat dragon standing up, and had 2 fine landlocked harbours and a hill in the centre part marked the Spyglass. There were several additions of a later date, but above all, 3 crosses of red ink, and in a small, neat hand, very different from the captain's tottery characters. These words: bulk of treasure here. Over on the back, the same hand had written this further information. Tall tree, spyglass shoulder, bearing a point to the N of NNE. Skeleton Island, ESE, and by E. 10 feet. The bar silver is in the north cache. You can find it by the trend of the east hummock, 10 fathoms south of the black crag with the face on it. The arms are easy found in the sand hill. N, point of north inlet cape, bearing E, and a quarter N. J. F. That was all. But brief as it was, and to me, incomprehensible. It filled the Squire and Dr Livesey with delight. "Livesey," said the Squire, "you will give up this wretched practice at once. So, I know you're doing good work healing people, but somebody's hidden some coin somewhere. Tomorrow, I start for Bristol. In 3 weeks' time, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 10 days, we'll have the best ships there and the choicest crew in England. Hawkins shall come as cabin boy." Well, it would be a nice change from running the pub that he's been doing. Just keep putting these 6-year-olds to work. Keep putting them to work. Make Tories of them yet. "Hawkins shall come as cabin boy. You'll make a famous cabin boy, Hawkins. You, Livesey, a ship's doctor. I'm admiral." Giving himself the top spot. No election. "We'll take Redruth, Joyce and Hunter." There's obviously lads who work on his staff, on his estate, in his house. He's taking them, whoever they are. "We'll have I'm getting a bit worried about this Squire. He's getting a bit too overexcited. "We'll have favourable winds, a quick passage, and not the least difficulty in finding the spot, and money to eat, to roll in, to play duck and drink with ever after." Everyone like that looking at him. "Trelawney," said the doctor, "I'll go with you, and I'll go bail for it. So will Jim, and be a credit to the undertaking. There's only one man I'm afraid of." "And who's that?" cried the Squire. "Name the doctor." "You," replied the doctor. "Oh, he's done him. He's done him. That is a par." "You," replied the doctor, "for you cannot hold your tongue. We are not the only men who know of this Pipier. What? "We are not the only men who know of this paper. These fellows who are taken in tonight, bold, desperate blades, for sure. And the rest who stayed aboard that lugger, and more, I dare say, not far off, are, one and all, through thick and thin, bind that they'll get that money. We must none of us go alone till we get to sea. Jim and I shall stick together in the meanwhile. You'll take Joyce and Hunter when you ride to Bristol, and from first to last not one of us must breathe a word of what we find. Livesey, returned the squire, you are always in the right of it. I'll be as silent as the grave. End of chapter 6. And the end, my friends, of part 1 of Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island.